Hello dear students of class 9th, welcome to Polity class. I hope all of you are fit and healthy. Students, in this video I shall be continuing with the second chapter from your Polity book, that is Constitutional Design. Students, in the previous video I explained you about the independence of South Africa, that how South Africa finally attained or got its independence, how the people worked in order to achieve independence, in order to be independent. I also explained you about Nelson Mandela. After 28 years of imprisonment, he came out from the prison and then he became the first black president of South Africa. And now the country was free. Nobody was suppressed, nobody was oppressed. There was no policy of segregation. Earlier there was policy of segregation that was adopted by the whites in order to segregate or separate the blacks, but now after the freedom this was not there. So students, I explained you that South Africa finally got its freedom. Now the question was that okay, we have attained freedom, we got the freedom, but how will the constitution be formed? How the constitution of our country will be drafted? This was the question. So now I am going to explain you about the Constitution of South Africa. That means how the Constitution of South Africa was drafted, how it was framed. So students, let me explain you about this. So the first point is that the blacks So the first point is the black leaders appealed the fellow blacks to forgive the whites for their atrocities. Now what is the meaning of atrocities? Atrocities means cruel act, the act of violence. So the black leader, they were requesting, they were appealing to their fellow black leaders to forgive the people who had discriminated them, who had dominated over them. Because now blacks were in power, they had several rights, right? So the black leaders, they were appealing and they were requesting the fellow black leaders to forgive the whites for their atrocities they had committed while in power. So when the whites were in power, they committed several atrocities, that means cruel acts. So the blacks were requesting that let us not do the same thing again. If we will do the same thing, then what will be the difference between we and them? So we need to be generous. We have to create a society. We have to rebuild a society. We have to do construction, not destruction. This was their mindset. This was their attitude while framing the constitution. So they thought to forgive the whites for the atrocities, for the cruel act, for the violence they had done, for the segregation, the policy of segregation that was adopted for the blacks. So this was their attitude. This was the attitude of blacks. See, if I talk about Nelson Mandela, then he was the follower of Gandhiji, and Gandhiji said that an eye for an eye makes the world blind. That means if we will also do the same thing, then there will be no difference, and then again South Africa will be under dominance. There will be discrimination, there will be the policy of segregation. That means the whole thing will be repeated. So there will not be any use of that big freedom struggle. So let us not do that. This was the point of view of the black leaders. This is the first point, that they requested their fellow black leaders to forgive the whites. Now the second point, the party that ruled through oppression and brutal killings and the party that led the freedom struggle sat together to draw up a common constitution. That means the party that ruled through oppression and brutal killings, that means the white people, the white rulers and the party that led the freedom struggle, that means the black leaders, they were sitting together to make the constitution of South Africa. That means on one side the black people were there, and on the other side the whites were there. That means the oppressor and the oppressed, they were sitting together framing the constitution of South Africa. They were drafting together the constitution of South Africa. That is why it is called as a rainbow nation, because of the attitude of the people, because of the attitude of the leaders who were in power, because of their generous nature. Means not only people of one community or group will rule the nation, but everybody will come together. There will be unity, there will be integration, and then only true freedom can be achieved or attained. This was the mindset of the people after the independence from white rule. Okay? Now let us come to the third point or the next point. So the next point is, together they decided that in the search for a solution to the problem, nobody should be excluded, nobody should be treated as a demon. That means they wanted to prepare an inclusive constitution. Inclusive means where everybody is included, nobody is discriminated, nobody is excluded. They wanted to include everybody. They wanted to get that equality in the nation, unity, the sense of integration, the sense of brotherhood. Everywhere everybody should be treated equal, everybody should be given equal rights, everybody should be given equal opportunities, they should be considered one, their value should be one, the value of every citizen should be considered equal. So this was the mindset of the people while preparing the constitution of South Africa. They wanted to treat everybody as equal and nobody should be treated as a demon. Here demon means the people who are trying to suppress the other, that is called as demon, the people who are trying to segregate and dominate over the other. So they wanted an inclusive constitution. So this was their mindset while framing the constitution of South Africa. I hope this point is clear. Now the next point or the fourth point, they agreed that everybody should become part of the solution, whatever they might have done or represented in the past. That means they wanted to forget past, because in past the whites, they had actually suppressed the blacks. So they wanted that in order to get any solution, we must not exclude or we must not try to oppress any particular group. Everybody should be considered as one. So they wanted to have an optimistic future. They wanted to forget the past, they wanted to forget the atrocities of the past, the cruel act of the past, and they wanted to move in an optimistic manner. That means they had a positive mindset. Their mindset was not narrow, it was broad. They wanted the true development of that nation. They wanted to set an example of that nation to the entire world, that yes, we can stand together, we can stand in integration, we can stand in unity. Even though things were not in the favor of blacks, but when the blacks got freedom from the whites, they did not eliminate or discriminate the whites, they rather included, because they wanted an inclusive constitution. So this was their mindset or framework while framing or drafting the constitution of South Africa. They wanted to have an optimistic future, and on these ideas the constitution of South Africa was based on. So this is an inspiration for the entire world, for the complete world. And that is why South Africa is called as a rainbow nation, because it worked together with several groups of people, with several communities, where nobody was discriminated on any grounds. So this was the mindset while framing the constitution. So this was the idea. On these ideas the constitution was prepared. So I hope that till here points are clear to everybody. This topic is clear to everybody, that why, cut this line. So I hope that this topic is clear to everybody, that regarding the constitution of South Africa. Now students, I hope this topic is clear to everybody. Now I shall move to the next topic, that why do we need a constitution? What is the significance of constitution? See, I hope from the example of South Africa, you can well understand the need of constitution. One was the oppressor and the other was the oppressed, and there was a dire need for a constitution. Now why? What is the significance of it? See students, in order to build trust, there has to be written rules. See, only verbal rules are not enough. For example, today I say that okay, from tomorrow you have to do this, but tomorrow I might change my words. So there has to be written record, there has to be written rules, so that trust can be built. So that is why constitution is needed. There is a dire need for a constitution. Now students, what is the significance of rules? Why do we need rules in constitution? So that it cannot be changed easily. That is why we need rules. If rules will not be there, then whatever the rulers or the people in power they want, they can do as per their own will. But if certain rules will be there, if laws will be there, then they have to think, they have to work in accordance with the rules and regulations that are mentioned in the constitution, right? So what is the significance of it, or what do you understand by the term constitution? See, a constitution of a country is a set of written rules that are accepted by the people, by all the people, I would say, living together in a country. So there has to be a set of rules in a country, the set of rules that the people of the entire country must accept. See, the constitution is the supreme law that determines the relationship among the people living in a territory, and also the relationship between the people and the government. Means there is a relationship between the people and the government, as well as there is a relationship between the people, between several people. So in order to determine that relationship, there is a need for constitution. We require constitution. So we have to cut that line. So students, constitution is really very important for any country. So now I will explain you in points that why constitution is important. So now students, I will explain you the importance of constitution or the significance of constitution. I will explain you in 4 major points. So the first point is, as you can see on the screen, see, first it generates a degree of trust and coordination that is necessary for different kinds of people to live together. See, if in a country there is diversity, that means there are different types of people that are living in a country. So there has to be a bond, there has to be a level of or a degree of trust between them. If trust will not be there, then people in a country will not be able to live in harmony. There will not be peace in the country. For example, if I take about or if I talk about South Africa, as South Africa got independence, that means as the blacks got independence from whites, then the whites, they were in fear that the blacks may repeat the things, they may do those cruel acts on them in order to take revenge. So there has to be a level of trust, there has to be a degree of trust that okay, a constitution is there, that means the people in power, they will not misuse their power. So they have to live in the same country. So trust is very important between the people to be in harmony, to be in unity and integration. So the first point is, the first significance of a constitution is it generates a degree of trust and coordination. I hope the first point is clear to everybody. Now students, let's move to the second point. The second point is, it specifies how the government will be constitution. Cut this line. Now let's come to the second point, children. The second point is, it specifies how the government will be constituted, who will have power to take which decisions. See, the question is how the government will be formed, who will be in power or who will take which decision, who will get what power. So there are so many questions. So there has to be, everything has to be decided, everything has to be mentioned or written in clear words. Otherwise people will try to misuse the power. So in order to avoid that, thing, a constitution is mandatory, where everything is specified that who is responsible for what, who is responsible for taking what kind of decisions. I hope the second point is clear to everybody. Now students, let's move to the third point or of the significance of constitution. So the third point is, it lays down the limits on the power of the government and tells us what the rights of the citizens are. That means it limits the power of government so that the government does not enjoy unlimited power, so that the government does not misuse the power, to what extent the government can use the power. So these things have to be specified, these things have to be written, so that the rights of the citizens are protected, the interests of the citizens are protected, so that rule of law can be ensured, so that the rights of the citizens are safeguarded. So in order to ensure these points, there has to be a check on the government, otherwise the government will misuse the power. So for this purpose, a constitution has to be there, because in constitution all the points are very clearly mentioned, because the government needs to protect the rights of its citizens. If constitution will not be there, then the government will not protect the rights of its citizen. Okay, because in the constitution everything is mentioned, the rights of the citizens, the duties of the citizens, the rights of the government, the duties of the government, and everything is very clearly specified in the constitution. So this is the third importance or significance of a constitution. Now let's come to the fourth point or the last point. So the fourth point is, it expresses the aspirations of the people about creating a good society. See students, the constitution of a country reflects the mindset of its people. What you are thinking, what are your aspirations are reflected in the constitution. Whether you have a positive mindset or you have a negative mindset, that also is reflected in the constitution. Let me give you an example. Let me tell you about the constitution of the whites. When whites were there, they were dominating the blacks. So their constitution was different. Their mindset was to disturb, humiliate the black people. But when blacks came in power, the mindset of the people changed. They wanted to have a rainbow nation. They wanted to create a rainbow nation, as a result of which they had a positive mindset. They were very optimistic regarding the future. So a constitution tells us about the mentality of the leaders, mentality of the people, mentality of the citizens. Okay, so a constitution reflects the mentality and mindset of the people. So students, I hope all the 4 points related to the significance of constitution is clear to everybody. Now students, there is a statement, as you can see here. So the statement is, all countries that have a constitution are not necessarily democratic, but all countries that are democratic will have constitution. This is a very important statement. See, all countries that have constitution are not necessarily democratic. See, if I talk about countries like Pakistan, as you studied in the first chapter, about Pervez Musharraf, he was the president, there was constitution in Pakistan, but that country was not democratic under Pervez Musharraf. It was not democratic because he used to amend the constitution as per his own will. So constitution was definitely there in Pakistan, but that country, that means Pakistan, it was not democratic. But if I talk about India, India is a democratic country, so it has a constitution. See, these are two different things. Only having a constitution does not mean that a country is democratic, but if a country is democratic, that means it will have a constitution. This is a very important statement. So if a country will be democratic, rule of law and respect of rights will be there. So these are the things that are mentioned in the constitution, or I would say these are the significance of constitution. So I would say having a constitution is a general practice. Okay. So I hope that this topic is clear to everybody, and students, in the next video I shall be explaining you about the making of the Indian Constitution. Till then, thank you so much and stay safe.